Hi guys, and welcome to my new video where I'm going to dive into the world of Italian organized crime, specifically the Camorra. Now, the Camorra is a mafia type gang that exists in the Naples and Campania region of Italy. Similar to the mafia, except that it has a sort of smaller federalist structure. Several sort of small clans kind of, they ally with each other or fight with each other back and forth. Still, it is a very, very powerful criminal group in Italy and worldwide. So today we're going to dive into the story I think was one of the most fascinating, crafty, interesting, unbelievable Camorra bosses that's ever existed. His nickname is Ceruso o Milionario, which means something along the lines of Ceruso the Millionaire, but his real name is Paolo Di Lauro. Paolo Di Lauro originally came from a neighborhood north of Naples called Secondigliano. Di Lauro himself was an orphan and was adopted by a family. Di Lauro, in fact, kept the house he was raised in. He began to create a family. He married a woman named Luisa di Avanzo, and her father was also a powerful Camorristi. Di Lauro's wife would give birth to 11 children, all of them sons, although there is conflicting reports that she did give birth to one daughter. But regardless, he had at least 10 sons.
As a younger man, Paolo Di Lauro worked as a door-to-door salesman selling garments in the industrial northern cities of Italy. This is what is known as a magliare, a traditional Neapolitan salesman. The word magliare itself can sometimes hold a negative connotation, meaning a cheat or a con man.
So initially, Paolo Di Lauro worked for another Camorra boss, this guy called Ennio La Monica. Ennio La Monica was a kind of old-style mafia boss in a sense. He believed in simple protection rackets, extorting small shopkeepers, this type of thing. And he never really saw beyond that or bigger than that. Meanwhile, Paolo Di Lauro worked for him as a sort of like an accountant or a contabile. He helped him to, sort of keep the books from his various either gambling operations, extortion rackets. But Paolo Di Lauro was extremely smart and good with numbers and extremely ambitious. And he liked to gamble, something that he would continue on through the rest of his life, an enjoyment of gambling and sort of working the odds. And in fact, that's how he earned his nickname, Ceruso o Milionario. At a backroom card game in Naples, a fellow Camorristi saw Di Lauro pull out stacks of lira, to which he remarked, "Who's this guy? Ceruso o Milionario?" Ceruso the Millionaire. And that's how he got his nickname. So, as Paolo worked for La Monica, he began to see a series of other opportunities that he felt that his boss and their sort of, gang should be involved in, such as, for instance, drugs. Paolo Di Lauro saw that there was an infinite amount of money to make in drugs, but La Monica was kind of stuck in his ways. So Di Lauro, feeling that he had no other option left, decided that it was time to murder his boss and take over the gang.
To gain support for his coup, Di Lauro, being the accountant, went to other members of the clan and told them La Monica was keeping a lion's share of the profits for himself and giving them a pittance. La Monica initially heard about this disloyalty and tried to kill Di Lauro, chasing him through the streets while shooting at him. But Paolo was able to escape.
So anyway, with a couple of other guys, he got a car, and they found Ennio La Monica going through the streets, and they hit him with the car, they got out, and they shot him. Now, Di Lauro was not necessarily a violent enforcer. During this assassination, Di Lauro himself proved to be a poor shot, and the other men that were with Di Lauro ended up having to finish the boss off.
And with this, Di Lauro became the boss of the clan that would one day bear his name. Following this incident, he vowed never again to pick up a gun and involve himself in the nitty-gritty of Camorra violence, realizing that this was not his strength.
He began to court South American drug cartels. So the sort of low-key, calculate your odds type of guy that he was able to convince the drug cartels, and he began to build a sort of drug dealing empire in the northern area of Naples. One of the things that he did that was very revolutionary in the drug game was he created essentially what was a franchising system. So he would bring in the large lots of cocaine, and then he would essentially franchise them out to different dealers all in the area. He would say, I will offer you a good quality product at a fair price. If you find a fair price or a better quality product somewhere else and you want to buy from that person instead, that's fine with me. But I will always be here. I will always give you a dependable supply of product. And it worked. Many of the dealers and local sort of lieutenants that ran the smaller neighborhoods appreciated being allowed to earn without sort of having someone always over their shoulder. As his drug profits grew and he began to control the various neighborhoods in northern Naples, the threat of him and his gang members was able to stop a lot of petty crime and things like that in Naples, in the northern area of Naples, to the point where people felt comfortable sort of parking their cars and motorinos and stuff outside without fear of a kind of simple street crime, because Paolo Di Lauro would not tolerate this kind of victimizing of the sort of poor working class people that lived in the area that he controlled. He was also quite the diplomat. He was able to create a series of alliances along with other powerful Camorra families from the north of Naples, like Locciardis, Malardos, Continis,
Lo Russo, Rinaldi.
One of the things that he did was he controlled these factories that made a lot of clothing for the big fashion houses. And what he would do is he would then have the factories just continue making the same garments, exactly the same as they had made them, for an order from a Gucci. And he created essentially a true fake. And then he would mix them into the stores to the point that they would be mixed in with the real thing and no one would be able to tell the difference. He even went as far as buying shops in Spain and in Paris, and where he sold his fake real or real fake Italian designer jeans and shirts. Di Lauro even began to go to China before this was commonplace and hire factories there to make power tools slapped with the label of well-known brands, as well as goods like cameras and other electronics. At the same time, nothing ever sort of stays as it should. And there was a few feuds between some of the Camorra clans, northern clans. But every time this happened, Di Lauro, instead of sort of just waging an all-out war, he always tried to smooth it over and keep business first, you know what I'm saying? And not allow this violence to get out of hand and draw police in and, tear down the empire that he was building. And around this time, there was also a lot of rumors that once Paolo Di Lauro got so big, he would do things like he would go to the butcher shop that he would own. Di Lauro dressed as a butcher and stood behind the counter. For every 5 euros that the patrons spent, Di Lauro would give them 50 euros in return. Again, this story is unsubstantiated. In another version of the story, when the patrons realized that it was Di Lauro himself behind the counter, they lined up to kiss his hand as a sign of respect. All while he's building this massive criminal empire, the government, or the police, the Carabinieri and stuff, they have no idea who this guy is. But they know that someone big is running crime in northern Naples. And they've sort of gone around wiretapping various, suspected Camorristi and listening in and trying to figure out who is running things in this particular area. And one of the things that they constantly hear on the wiretaps is talk of a guy called Pasquale or the Rabbit Man, but they're never able to identify who that is until one of Di Lauro's sons, a young boy at the time, going to a primary school, grade school, was rowdy in the classroom and was disruptive, and the teacher became very upset with the young boy. In fact, he slapped him as punishment for his misbehavior. The young boy, of course, being the son of Paolo Di Lauro, vowed revenge, invoked his father's name, so on and so forth to the teacher, before going and finding some sort of cousins and other low-level clan affiliates to ambush and beat up the teacher. The teacher, of course, went to the police and told them this whole story, and in fact mentioned that this name Paolo Di Lauro had been thrown around many times during the incident as someone that the teacher and maybe everyone else in Naples should fear. Di Lauro himself, with his lawyer, went to the police station and smoothed the whole thing over, claiming that he was himself not involved in any kind of organized crime. He apologized for his son's bad behavior and said that he had no part in ordering any kind of harm to come to this teacher. So he leaves the police station. The police are satisfied with this explanation. Now, on the wiretaps, they hear the Camorristas gossiping, saying, "Did you hear? Pasquale, or the Rabbit Man, he was arrested, or he went down to the police station to talk with the police." Then the police knew that Pasquale, or the Rabbit Man, was Paolo Di Lauro, and he was running a large portion of the crime in the north of Naples. Now, this didn't exactly stop Paolo Di Lauro. It just gave the police a sort of something to latch on to, just try and watch this guy and figure out what he was up to. His sons are getting older now, and his sons are becoming involved in the Camorra business as well. On top of that, he's enjoying his riches, if you will, by going to places like Monte Carlo and stuff like that, and going on these kind of gambling trips to enjoy himself, because he didn't like the idea of enjoying himself or gambling or whatever in the area that he controlled. He liked to go on vacation. And in fact, there's a quote attributed to him which is said that in the neighborhoods that I control, I do not want my gang members, my soldiers, to have sexual relations with the wives and girlfriends of other gang members. I don't want any trouble. I don't want any fights. I don't want anything like that. All I want to hear is the patter of cash. In the early 2000s, some of Di Lauro's lieutenants, used to the laissez-faire way of operating, began to take things a little too far, stretch a little beyond what Di Lauro allowed of them in his otherwise free market plan management style. One such man, Gaetano McKay, who had gone a little bit too much out on his own, was called to meet the boss in the hospital. Di Lauro's son had been in a bad motorcycle accident and was in a coma. While in the hospital room, Di Lauro took a glass, pissed in it, and forced Gaetano McKay to drink the entire glass to prove his loyalty to Di Lauro. This truce, however, would not last. When the McKay brothers decided they were done living under the thumb of Di Lauro, they were joined by a series of other local clan leaders, lieutenants, who wanted to strike out on their own, including another man named Rafael Amato. Amato himself was known as a Spaniard due to the fact that he was constantly traveling between Spain and Italy, helping the clan to smuggle drugs from the western coast of Spain in Galicia across the land in garbage trucks down into Naples. Together, they created their own gang, which they called secessionisti, or the secessionists, right? They wanted to secede from the Di Lauro clan and become their own clan. This war between the Di Lauro clan and the secessionisti became known as the Scampia feud, one of the northern neighborhoods controlled by the Di Lauro clan. And this was responsible for, there was a sort of killings back and forth. You know, Paolo Di Lauro went on the run, and his son, Cosimo Di Lauro, who dressed like Brandon Lee from The Crow with a sort of long hair and a jacket, became like one of the leaders of his father's kind of hit squads. They went back and forth in this series of, skirmishes, and some of them got pretty nasty. People got killed, they killed some women, they burned up this guy's girlfriend in a car. The police, there was an intense pressure for the police to, kind of shut this whole thing down. they began to arrest members of Di Lauro's clan. Things really came to a head, and initially they arrested his son, Cosimo Di Lauro. When Cosimo was arrested, as he was led out of the apartment block he was hiding in, many of the residents of the neighborhood, especially women, began to riot, dropping a toilet onto the Carabinieri from a roof above and lighting 2 cars on fire, as well as throwing various objects and debris at the police. Interestingly, the pictures taken by the press of Cosimo being let out of his hideout were then passed around on the cell phones of young women in Naples who idolized the handsome and rugged gangster. And then eventually the crushing blow came where they caught Paolo Di Lauro. He was living in an apartment, sort of an old woman, was like this old woman's apartment, and he was living there. And of course, the old woman's apartment where he was hiding was sort of, he never really left his area when he went on the run. He was always in the same, kind of area. Di Lauro himself remained calm when he was arrested, telling the police to settle down, they would have no trouble from him. When Di Lauro was finally arrested and taken to the police station, he said only, "I am a simple shopkeeper." There was rumors about his arrest, and one of the rumors was that he was arrested because he had wanted to have his favorite dish, pezzogna, which is a blue or black spotted sea bream. And it's a particular dish that's prepared in Naples region. And this was rumored to be the boss's favorite dish. And supposedly he sent one of his lieutenants or thugs or whatever out to get this fish. And that's how they caught him. But other people say that that's just a rumor and that he was arrested and found because of some interference by the Italian sort of Secret Service or CIA or whatever you want to call it. Maybe there was some kind of phone tapping or something that they did that helped the local Neapolitan police catch Paolo Di Lauro. Di Lauro was put into prison under the very strict 41 bis regulations, which is a law in Italy, an incarceration sort of, condition that they put Camorras and mafiosi bosses in, and it basically puts them sort of under this 24-hour surveillance. They only get to see their lawyer once a month. There's phone calls, everything's monitored to keep these bosses from sort of running the clans while they're behind bars, which they used to be able to do more freely before this sort of stricture was put in place. Also, his son went to prison over this, and that's where he stays until this day. He's about 70 years old, and he is still serving the life sentence. It was also later revealed that one of the ways that the police and the Italian Secret Service potentially caught Di Lauro was through a tip that came from a local young man named Edoardo La Monica, who was related all the way back to Di Lauro's original boss, Anelio La Monica. The discovery of this information by Di Lauro and his clan led to the young man being kidnapped, tortured, and dumped unceremoniously in the street as a warning to what would happen to those who would inform upon Di Lauro and his clan. Following Di Lauro's imprisonment and sort of the calming down of the feud, the ending of the feud, the secessionists themselves had earned a victory. They had earned the ability to earn unfettered. They had been able to take control of several piazzas and drug dealing sort of zones or areas for themselves, and the Di Lauro clan was left significantly weakened in men, territory, and leadership. The Secessionistas also began to earn the name the Amato Pagano clan due to Rafael Amato's control of some of these Secessionistas, as well as another man named Cesare Pagano. Together they created a combined clan. Amato was eventually arrested, released, and then re-arrested, where he is also serving a life sentence. Gennaro Marino Mackay kept sort of running things until he himself was gunned down in 2010, somehow related to an internal struggle in the Amato Pagano Secessionisti clan. The Secessionistas continued on, although they themselves devolved into a series of fights and civil wars and splinter groups and so on and so forth. Even recently, a so-called younger boss or clan leader of the Secessionistas himself was captured on the run, hiding in Dubai. And basically, that is the tale of Paolo Di Lauro, who I just think is so fascinating. His crazy style and his business acumen and the way that, it was sort of all torn asunder. A very, very fascinating tale of the Camorra.